morning, Coach.
Good morning, Mike.
How you feeling today, buddy?
I'm feeling like this gloomy weather is well-timed.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is easing my decision to take advantage of and absorb either A, very easy day via just swim, or maybe even B, just soak in a nice day off.
Whoa.
Yeah, I haven't made a decision one way or the other yet. I'll likely swim, but yeah, I mean, nothing. It'd be only my second day off, since we started this. So I'm gonna do what the body tells me to, and I got a lot of catching up to do from the weekend in terms of some. I got a lot of swim analysis on deck videos and stuff, so got to knock those out, and just gonna prop my feet up, soak it in, and see what happens, and then kind of see where I stand around 2 o'clock.
Yeah, you'll be out there. You'll swim.
No, I probably will.
You kind of feeling, if you're feeling like I am, you're kind of thinking, well, man, I'm tired, or I should be exhausted from a huge week of work and camp, and but you're also inspired.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely inspired.
You were, teaching a lot of good stuff at the swim camp for sure, and you're probably anxious to get out there and use some of your own lessons.
Yeah, I do. I try to pay attention. I try to practice what I preach.
Well, teaching's the best way to learn.
This is very, very true.
So yeah, that's the thing I'm thinking about swimming at some point, but definitely not now. You're right. It's just sort of a drizzly, kind of cloudy Monday morning, and it just feels like it's perfect timing. It feels like it needed to happen.
It does. Definitely needed to happen.
Mm-hmm. So what I thought maybe we talk about the camp a lot, and I was talking to my buddy this morning a little bit about it actually, and at the coffee shop, and I was saying how successful these camps are and how people really get into them and love them, and frankly how that we've done 2 now, and since the first one I was like, okay, that went really well, and then the second one went really well again, and frankly it kind of surprised me that people are that into it. And then we started talking about that, and he was like, well, man, I think people, there's people out there that really love to learn and get better and do stuff that is different than the typical getaway on the weekend or whatever, and there's sort of a trend in society where people don't necessarily quote it. They like the idea of maybe coming in for 3 or 4 days and doing something and being a part of a group and learning from others and seeing other ideas when they're trying to improve their game. But they don't like the idea of committing their life to it per se.
Right.
And he kind of used the analogies like that's why the traditional, maybe churches are kind of losing a little steam, or country clubs or whatever. It's like people don't want to just join everything. They want to try different things and be a part of, different experiences. And I thought that was an interesting analogy to the camp, in the sense that, it's just something that's here, and it's kind of a shot in the arm, and it's a really good group of people to be around for 3 or 4 days, especially when you're trying to grow in an isolated world of triathlon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I definitely know. I think that your text earlier about or I think we discussed it briefly via text or whatever, maybe yesterday or Saturday, about just the opportunity to and I think I said this in my text yesterday to the campers, was this sport can be so terribly isolating, and I don't and I think there are some benefits to doing certain things in isolation, but it's when it's that fine line between training in isolation and feeling isolated and feeling lonely. And I think when you combine those things without having an outlet or positive influences or connecting with actual people, this day and age, you literally don't have to leave your house if you don't want to. You can get food delivered, you can get everything you need, people can come to your house, you can have all the TV, the ability and the necessity to have to connect with other people and commit to, partaking in other groups and doing other things, like it's become like almost an endangered species. And that was one of the biggest things that I kind of learned about camp, was that in triathlon, it can be just a very, even if you train with a group or you train with other people, or it's not a team sport. I mean, it's about as just you. It's about as much of an individual sport as you can find. And I think that that's it can become, like I said, it can be a positive, or in a lot of times it can be really turned into a negative.
Yeah, you have to, it's like everything else, you have to be able to find a balance, and it's so easy to go down one road or the other. I think that, I've been historically pretty comfortable in my own skin and with myself. It's just that, the easier it becomes these days to do that, the more dangerous it can become. Just like if you do a race and you're trained up to your peak performance, and then decide that you want to, rest for a couple months, and then it's not the rest per se that you need the rest, but it's so easy to go down a road of losing it all. You spend all this time building your base, and then you get it up to the peak of your training, and then it goes away, and then you got to kind of start over again, so it's kind of like, in my opinion, it's sort of like easy to do that when you get super isolated or you get super into a group. You don't get to reflect, so there has to be a balance in that. And it's just a very difficult line to walk sometimes. That's why I think this camp thing and the infusion of like, okay, now, all right, we're around, it's kind of you're around people a lot for a few days, and like-minded people, positive people. It kind of restores that energy to just, in normal life, go out there and maybe do that a little bit more too,
Yeah, I think in that, and I think it's also good to see, okay, these people are managing this too. And they seem to be happy, and they seem to be positive, and while they may seem or outwardly project like a positive, energized attitude, they're at the same time, like during camp, we all struggle, and we all, everybody has, nobody is perfectly armored, with the ability to just withstand anything, and it can be a very, very uncomfortable environment. You're coming to a place you've never trained on. You're coming to be around athletes you've never been around. You have no idea how fast or how slow or how anything you are, compared to the other people. So, anybody that comes, I think, is already proving to themselves that they can do something that they may have not, thought they were able to do and achieve, which is get out of their comfort zone. I will use myself as an example. I'm not sure. I've thought about doing one in the past, but me, I'm selectively social. Yeah. I'm not. I wouldn't say that I don't know what I am. I don't know if I'm an extrovert or introvert. I know I probably seem like an extrovert via the podcast, but as it sits right now, I'm just sitting here at my office desk upstairs alone. So I'm not sure that counts as being an extrovert. Although in a camp setting, I probably can seem like I'm an extrovert.
Especially coaching, man. When you're in the coach mode.
Coaching, you have to be an extrovert, but at the same time, and I've said this before on another podcast, is I don't consider myself a people person. I consider myself a person. Like I really enjoy connecting with people. I really enjoy the relationships, and that to me is why coaching as a way of life for me, that it's quote unquote my actual job is I'm in it for the results for the athletes, but primarily I'm in it for the relationships that I get with people and to connect. So I love to connect with people, and I think to an extent, I know firsthand from personal experience the turmoil and the depressed nature and the just total like chaos and havoc that loneliness and isolation can do to your life, and I think that, I think a lot of times people gravitate to the sport because they, we talked about this before, is like they're looking for something, or they're looking to fill a void, or they're looking to chase something, or they need a distraction, or it's a goal. It's never, in my opinion, it's never the primary reason. I just want to do a triathlon. I think it sometimes is that, but I think usually it's okay. Well, what were you thinking leading up to that? It's like when I was in the gym business for such a long time, and that was like one of the most important questions that we ask people is like, or what you try to get out of somebody. Oh, well, I want to lose weight. Okay, well, why? Like, you didn't just wake up today and decided you wanted to lose weight. Like what actually made you walk through the door? And it's usually like an experience. Like they had a bad experience, like they just finally couldn't fit into these jeans, or somebody said something to them, they looked at a picture. And so that was the real reason. It just took them a period of time to actually take the necessary step. Like, and then for joining a gym, the hardest step isn't working out. The hardest step is the first step you make when you come through the door to join. Yeah. And so I think that's one of the reasons that, I love what we do, and what I've been able to be a part of and connecting with people is that, I'm very aware all the time of what isolation and loneliness can do to a person. And that's not something that I wish to see. And then that's why I really enjoy and love really trying to connect other people, to have that kind of sense of community.
Mm-hmm. And I'm the same way, right? So I've always been an isolationist, but I'm fairly outgoing, but it isn't always comfortable. And I think what at the core for me is that I've always gravitated towards people who feel like they've got a lot to learn, or they want to get better, or they know everything about them isn't perfect. They can be confident, but to it's like I feel like over my lifestyle growing up and my family and everything, I think it's given me a very good radar on if people are genuine. I'm either that, or I think I have that good radar, very perceptive or something. But I am perceptive in that way where I'll definitely look for people who want to be going down a path towards getting better themselves, towards improving themselves, or being open-minded and discussing and like being willing to see other sides of the story and try to get better, whatever. So that's why I think that, especially in today's world, a lot of times it's just this bombastic attack on everything, and people are, it's almost, because I always look at that as like, what void are they trying to fill, and they'll never be able to step back and look inside themselves. And I think that's what we see a lot in this group, and especially that in the group, and then with people that come to camp, it's like people that want to get better and they're sincere about it. I mean, this weekend we had, at least two people who were tremendously overweight, and they were going down a really bad road, and they recognize it, and they've turned it around, and they know that, they want to be healthy and happy, and it's just so much more enjoyable and easier for me to connect with people like that socially. When you're not being judged, or that there's not some agenda or something like that, and people are kind of starting within themselves, because that's usually what's going on. I think a lot of times is that people tend to project how they're feeling, or their displeasure, anger, or whatever onto the world, instead of starting inside and working out.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, I feel like I have the same kind of radar. I'm generally a skeptic anyway when it comes to most things. But when I see, usually like in terms of like conversation, I can always tell like I can tell if you're trying to convince yourself of something. Because like the things you say, or the things you do, or the way you act, or like I can tell that you're bravado, or that And a lot of times for me, it's like the more you talk, the more I start to just not listen.
I know.
And whether that's right or wrong, I'm not real sure. But hey, that's just who I am. That's how I roll. But it's because I feel like sometimes silence and being okay not knowing, or just like someone who openly acknowledges they're uncomfortable, to me shows a tremendous amount of strength. Because allowing someone and others to see you vulnerable instead of just, you'll see a lot of people like overact and overcompensate and talk too much or tell too many jokes or be like, I know you're trying like this, you're probably uncomfortable. You're just trying to like not pretend, you're trying to like pretend like you are. But for people who pretend, who don't do that and just allow themselves like to let you visibly see them uncomfortable, I think takes a tremendous amount of strength. And, I think that's where people learn to grow. And I tend to gravitate towards people like that because I feel that they are more open to connect with than people who already have up, like personality walls, I would say. They don't want you to really see what's going on. And that's another reason why I just, yes, is camp, a really, really great representation, of it? Sure. But, to another extent, like it's the emails that we get via this podcast, the discussion that goes on in our closed Crushing Iron, Facebook group, the awesome conversations and stuff I get to have with the athletes that we coach, and, stuff that you and I chat about. Like, it's just, it does way more for me than I feel like I do for anybody else. Like, I feels weird. I don't take compliments very well anyway, but I've always feel kind of like weird when somebody thanks me for doing this, because I don't necessarily feel like, I don't know. It's weird to hear that. But, I do think that it's kind of brought we don't have tons of structure when it comes to the podcast. We don't interview pro triathletes every other week and people that aren't necessarily relatable. We just talk. And I think that it's that being relatable that connects with people, because I think in the sport, we a lot of times really, really look for a group and people to connect with, because you can get so caught up in your mind in the sport, whether it's results, whether it's where you place, who you're comparing yourself to, and technology's only made it worse, and social media has just compounded it. It's like it's comparison 24/7, and we tend to, and it's so hard to kind of see just looking through our own glasses. Is like, okay, this is my own journey, it's nobody else's, but I can't literally pick up my phone or scroll through a feed without immediately seeing someone else's accomplishments. And so you immediately think one of two things: oh, that wasn't that great, or oh wow, that was incredible. And then you're like, well, shit, like, why am I comparing myself, and why am I even being negative or positive? Like, why can't it just be whatever it is for that person? And I find myself doing that too sometimes. I see somebody post, I'm like, well, who gives a shit? Like, that's a lot of times that's my personality, and I'm not saying it's wrong or right, but it's like, it's everywhere. And it makes it difficult. And what I loved so much about like the environment that you can have when you get a really awesome group of people together that are all somewhat kind of uncomfortable. Like I know you were uncomfortable at points this weekend, and you're not a huge extrovert. I'm not. I'm coaching, people I've literally never met before, which is unnerving for me in a way. Then you had basically 6 or 7 total strangers connect, and it's like, how is this going to mesh? How is this going to do whatever? But I think everybody notices it. And so, they don't try to, like, nobody I felt like tried to overcompensate. We just kind of blended and like, okay, well, this is going to be hard. We were all uncomfortable at spots. And I think that's where you grow, and I think it also gives other people the opportunity to grow, is when you can connect and be around people, and not just shut yourself off to the world and make things like somebody texted me earlier today, an athlete that I just started working with, and they're being incredibly hard on themselves. And he said something, to the effect of, I'm always, or I find myself getting jealous of people on the podium. He says, I try not to envy people, because it just leads to disappointment, but I do envy people on the podium. And I said, you envy people on the podium, ? And I said, they might have the shittiest life possible. No friends, no life, all triathlon. And then I ended it with, as long as you always do your best, you'll get what you deserve. And I think that translates to on and off the course, and because, I think, it's tough. I think it's the hardest balance that we have within the sport of triathlon is the benefits of, because, me, I am perfectly fine training alone. I'm perfectly fine training in isolation. I don't, somebody commented on like my 46-mile ride at the lab the other day. It was like, I don't know how you do this. Like, I can just mindlessly tune out and I focus on me and getting better. At the same time, I can get infinite results and feel so good by being around such awesome positive energy, like going on an excruciatingly hard workout, because you get out of your own self, and it's not that you're more worried about other people. It's just that you are in an environment to where it's not all about you anymore. And I think that is where you also see a lot of growth.
Yeah, you talked about the energy of it, and I think that's a huge part. Is like, we didn't start this podcast. I mean, because I think basically we just started this podcast because we like talking about this kind of stuff, right? And and how triathlon is the center of it, but we know that there's so many more reasons and issues surrounding why we got into this sport and the whole 9 yards, and that to me is the whole big thing. You can talk about technique for how far can you go with that, and we definitely focus on how to get better, with those techniques, or the training plans and all these sorts of things, and we have a lot of that good information, but it's also the listening, and it's the energy surrounding us and surrounding the camps and surrounding the groups and everything like that makes such a big deal. I used to be this guy that was, remember when we started, it was like Garmin text, like, you know what I mean? Back in the day.
Yeah.
It was like everybody, we had a text thread of about 5 or 6 people, and it was just like, every other text was a shot of a Garmin. And I used to get, at first it was like, all right, and then it got so annoying after a while. And now I've kind of come full circle on that because, we're pushing each other, you and I, and you'll text me every once in a while, and when I'm just, maybe sitting around or, just trying to figure out what I'm going to do next, and I'll see what you did, and that pushes me, and that's part of that connection. I think that when we know there's a genuine kind of motivation behind it rather than a look at me, and I think, again, that sort of stuff comes from my perspective, right? Like if I look at everybody's posts where they're posting their splits or their Garmin times or whatever, and think, cocky, attention seeker, but there's more reason than that. They're proud of what they did. They're inspiring other people. So I've come full circle on that again. It's like I think it's great when people are excited, and you can go out and isolate yourself for 48 miles on the lab, but it's like, I think at those times for me, I can do that really well too, and that's when I have like a connection to everything, like a full body spirit connection, but it's very difficult to continue that. It's like you want to be around people that have like-minded challenges like that, so you realize you're not alone.
Right.
And that is why we started talking, and that's why people have started talking to us through this podcast, and we have open, door communication with everybody, and that's really the bottom line for me, is that, what's it going to take to help other people and have them. And like you said, we've been so inspired, and it's helped us so much to be connected with so many other people and positive people like that. And I don't know, man, it's just again, this podcast is just something like that I think people identify with, because those are the real root issues of this whole situation. It's not just hey, how can I run a little bit faster today?
Yeah, well, it's like, I know we just get down to it. It's about connecting, and there are so many studies out there, and so many like papers and groups and programs and versions of therapy that are about connecting and about being around like-minded people. And it's not like-minded people as in like our favorite color is all red and we're a Gemini and we all work construction, and that's one of the, in my opinion, one of the biggest reasons that AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, is so successful. Because for me, as coming up on almost 4 years being sober, like I can literally walk into a room out of town or in town with 100 people and literally feel like the most comfortable I've ever been.
Yeah.
And it's not because we have like just one thing in common. It's because more oftentimes than not, everybody is in there, is vulnerable, is open, and is going to share something probably, a lot of times difficult, and you're not going to be judged. But more often not, like it's in AA, like the longer you gain, like, months and years of sobriety, it's no longer really about not drinking. It's about emotional sobriety. Like you hear a lot of people talk, if you know anybody that's in recovery or that's gone to AA or whatever, you hear a term a lot of times called being a dry drunk. And what that means is that, it's a person who they may not drink, but they're literally miserable. And they lack that level of, or not level, they lack the, they haven't gotten to a point to where they're literally so happy with their life, they can't imagine it being any different. But at the same time, they're not willing to settle for where it is now. And for me, that was one of the biggest things, like, and I guess I'll kind of reverse a little bit, talking about isolation is like, you've known me for going on 5 years now. And there was a time, like, I guess this goes to the people that listen to the podcast and thank us, is like, I thank you, you, Mike, and then the people who listen, and obviously, my wife. I mean, there was a time 5 years ago, 2012, 2013, where I was in some of the worst shape of my life. I mean, I was, I've got addiction and alcoholism and everything that runs my family. And I had started to deal with, I was sexually abused when I was little by my uncle. I'm not sure if I've shared that before on the podcast or not. And I was starting to really, really struggle with some of the lasting effects from that emotionally and mentally. And I turned to I turned to two main things that to me were escapes. I turned to alcohol, and I turned to just burying myself in not working out, but in training, and believe me, those don't mix. And then as more of an introvert and going through what I was going through, like when I used to drink, I wasn't a partier. I might go out for just a little bit, but I was more likely to be at home by like 5 p.m. and then you wouldn't hear from me until the next day. And I would just sit alone, and I would sit in my own depression, and I would sit in my own isolation, and I would just sit being miserable. And and I would find these distractions with triathlon and coaching, and I was still a very successful coach and had a lot of podiums at Ironman events, and but it wasn't about. It was just as much for me as like semi connecting and also just like throwing everything I had somewhere else instead of like looking within to finally, get my own shit straight. And then luckily, I was given the opportunity to basically, say, hey, you don't have to live like this anymore, and you can choose to, change your life. And I mean, I remember I even told you, I think we had like lunch or something at Edley's, and I told you that I was thinking about, taking a step away for a while and going to work on some of my past issues with the trauma I'd had and alcohol and stuff. I wasn't able to do that alone. I was too scared to do it. I was terrified to do it and to leave everything I had and go away. And it wasn't terrified of what I was going to leave. And I think that's what you tell yourself anytime you go on like an endeavor or you try to go out some comfortable. You're almost afraid what you're going to find. And then you finally, like, you don't have any other choice. You have like no distractions. You have no TV. You have no cell service. You can't make phone calls. It's like, it's time to look at you, and that's it. And that is usually the worst part of it. That's like most people's worst nightmare and that's why we find ourselves like, it's so easy to hold everybody else in the world accountable except for ourselves. And we want everybody else to look in the mirror except for ourselves. And so for me, it was finally an opportunity to, I could do it or not do it. And I don't have any idea why. But it worked, and it worked because I worked. And I worked really hard at dealing with my past and, giving up, alcohol, and I've been sober ever since. But that emotional sobriety of thinking, all right, this is part of my past, but at the same time, like, how can I get better every day? And one of my like main signs of like not being happy is feeling lonely. And one of the main reasons that I ended up leaving Kansas City, and one of the main reasons that I was so amped about doing this podcast, is because I felt isolated and I felt alone. I felt isolated and alone at my job. I felt isolated and alone in my training, which are never good places to go for anybody, no matter what your past is. And so, go ahead.
I was going to say, so when you started recognizing that feeling, did you see that as kind of a little bit of a warning sign? Or, I mean, it was a sort of like, hey, there's something going on here that needs to change for me to keep going the right direction?
Yeah. I mean, and I knew at that point it was probably, I remember I told my wife one day, I said, and I'd already started coaching. I've always coached. I mean, I still have athletes I still have athletes now that I had before I even, got sober. I have some awesome people, but anyway, but no, it was one of those, yeah, you have to always kind of self-recognize, the two most dangerous things are, to me, in my personal experience, are your ego and then feeling lonely and isolated. And there's like totally two ends of the spectrum. But I told Allie, I said, I'm not really, I love the ability that I love what my job affords us to do. I have very good income, a great way of life. I make my own hours, but it's not filling up my cup. Like, and I don't feel like I'm helping anybody. And for me, that's when I start to feel like, well, if I'm not helping anybody, because I had moved up to the top of the business I was with, and so I was just like, I feel like I need to help more people, and so I looked at going into the treatment world and rehab, and I had actually heavily thought about that, going that route and helping people, because I think it's a very now that I kind of mention that, my one goal that I was looking for was, no matter what I did, I wanted to serve a underserved population, not underdeserving, because I feel like every population is deserving, but to fill a void or to fill a hole and make a difference in an underserved population. And so I started to look at jobs, and I was on I was part of a community board called First Call Drug and Alcohol Rehabilitation in Kansas City, and basically I would go around and speak to Job Corps, like in front of like 200 people, or basically people that feel like they don't have any hope or they don't have anywhere to go. And so I experimented with that. But yeah, and that's what made me feel isolated. It's because I felt like I wasn't helping anybody and connecting with anybody. And when we started to, that's when I kind of knew, all right, well, we need to look at moving back to Nashville, not for the connection piece, but that was huge. Our whole family is here. You're here. I had great friends here. A lot of really good stuff here. I had some job opportunities, but ultimately it just came down to connecting and feeling like I'm doing a population good, and that's what it came down for me. But yeah, for me, real high, high ego and isolation and loneliness are my biggest two. Hey, you need to check yourself and remember that, nobody's perfect, and everybody needs. You should always show grace and mercy, in my opinion, to everyone in the same way you wish to receive grace and mercy to yourself, because nobody's perfect. And we royally all fuck up, all of us, whether we like to admit it or not, whether we'd like for people to know about it or not, we all have. And it's like, so every time I see somebody, I try to be like, all right, well, I definitely have, my past, and I think everybody else is too, but that's why I try my best not to judge other people or jump to such harsh conclusions, because I feel like that's what also isolates us, is because we isolate ourselves into a defense of why we are where we are, and that once we kind of back ourselves into this isolated corner, which is what I did a long time ago, then you become just only like you tend to defend yourself and your reasonings and your beliefs and your why you judge and your expectations, and it's a really, really hard place to get out of. It just really is.
We're all in the human condition, and that, I think, too, is the reason I think that was one of the main reasons I was so drawn to you, because I had, my dad was in AA 30 years ago, and I had been around that, and everyone, heavy drinking history throughout my family. And once my dad went into AA, it really kind of woke me up, or at least gave me that kind of perspective that I've always sort of looked at. And kind of, before that happened, I didn't really understand what the hell was going on. You just sort of go blindly through life and kind of just, think that that's the way it is, right? But people are forgiving, and that's why, when you see these famous people or these athletes or whatever that try to hide everything or won't admit to anything, and then eventually they do, and then everybody's like, "Well, why don't you just say that, man? We get it." You know what I mean? It's like, and I think that there's something so powerful in the humility of understanding that you're flawed. And I really gravitate towards people like that. And, triathlon is not an easy sport, and there's a lot of ups and downs in it. And to see people masquerade like, it's the be all end all or life's perfect just because of triathlon, I think is a myth, And I really like the vulnerability of the sport, because it can break you down in a hurry. And, that's just a metaphor for life, really. I mean, it's very difficult for most of us to go through and, stay in that happy place or be content or always be connected, because the more you isolate, the harder it is to connect. But, 90% of life is showing up. And that's what you find, It's like people are in this. And I think when you can be around people that, and I think triathlon sort of comes from that base. I think it's sort of this search, right? Like you said earlier about people don't just go to the gym and say, "Hey, I want to lose weight." They've had something going on, and it's a symptom, and eventually they decide they want to get to the core of the issue, right? And that's certainly why I got into triathlon, is sort of a kind of wedge myself in the door of getting to understand myself better and being a better person in general, being happier and healthier. And then you go overboard the other way, and I think that's a tendency too. Is like, you know, you get into something new. It's like the answer, right? Triathlon was the answer for me that year one. It was everything, you know, and everything I posted was about my new journey. And it was like you can trick yourself into thinking that that's the answer, and it's so much more than that. You know, it's definitely a part of the answer, I think, and I think that's sort of what we like to keep the focus on, is that this can be a great vehicle, but it's not the only vehicle. It can open up the doors to different things and different people, and help you sort things out on your own with collective consciousness, so to speak. And yeah, I mean, I just really identified with you, I think, from the beginning, because I saw everything that you were just saying, you know, inside of you. You know, despite what maybe have been the public persona that we all try to put out there. And I like to think that's kind of what you saw in me, was just sort of like that, you know, compassion or understanding that, hey man, you know, I'm with you. You know, I get it. And I think that I like that the most. I mean, this weekend when we were out running and had a little free time to kind of just shoot the shit with some of the people and get into really what's going on. You know, why are they there? Why are you out here running for an hour and a half in some strange greenway with me right now? You know, what is that? But, you know, there's something there. I mean, and I asked one of the guys, and I don't, you know, I said, I said, what got you in? He's like, you know, my kid, man, said, Daddy, you're fat. And I said, how many times do you think about that? He goes, every day. That's why, you know, that drives me to run every day almost, or work out or whatever, to stay with this, because you could see it in his eye, you know, that there's more behind this story. It's not about the podium. It's not about this. It's about feeling better. It's about getting to be better. And it's about just finding a place of peace inside, you know, that you're comfortable with. And that's a never-ending journey. I mean, it sure seems like it.
Yeah, it always will be. Well, it should be. You know, but it's that, and that is probably the most frustrating part. Well, one of the, maybe not frustrating isn't the right word, but one of the more difficult parts of the sport that I have a hard time like comprehending. And maybe it's, you know, I don't know if it's a lack of sympathy or what it is, but I find that the more you allow yourself to fail, and the more, and I don't mean fail because you're not good enough, but I think if you're challenging yourself enough, you're never going to always hit your numbers, or you're never going to always PR, or you're never always going to hit your, you know, your hours for the week, or, you know, beat so-and-so. Like, if you're not trying hard enough, you know, then you never are going to fail. But if you're trying as hard as you can, you're always trying to push your limits, and you're always willing to fail, then that's when you become the most resilient version of yourself. Is putting it all out there. I want to finish an Ironman. I will finish an Ironman, whether it's running the whole marathon or whether it's having a poor day and having the courage to walk it to the end instead of just tanking it because a DNF is more ego saving and protecting than walking the finish to a time that's substandard to what you thought people wanted to see. Like, guess what? You don't grow worth shit from that. You don't grow any of it. Versus pushing yourself, committing to a goal, and then you know what? If you didn't succeed, or you didn't meet these gigantic expectations, and you finish it out because it's something you set out to do, that's when you learn something about yourself. Because you know what? It's not all about the numbers and the glory. Because you know how many people win an Ironman? One. One. The rest of us are just in it because hopefully you're using it to find something. You're in my opinion, you're doing this. You're either using the training and the environment and the community and the event to find something else about yourself that will transcend the way that you live, you work, you breathe, and you have family. Or B, you're using it to project something to other people that you want them to see, which has zero fulfillment. It may be fulfillment, on the short term, that day, but is it really fulfillment? Is it lasting fulfillment? Or is it just, letting water flow through it instead of sitting there and feeling full? And that's just one of the aspects of sport I struggle with sometimes, is like, you're not giving up. You're on the triathlon. You're giving up on yourself. And when push comes to shove the next time, like, it's what are you going to do? On the course or off the course, and that's when you learn to become. That's, I think, those are the parts of, like, when training in isolation, or not. I hate the word isolation. Like, the times that I go and train alone, and I choose to do one more lap at the lab, or I choose to do one more interval, or I choose to put myself in a position where I might fail and not meet my numbers. Those are the most, while they may be terrifying because I might just suck, those are when I learn the most about myself. And I don't even learn the most about myself within that workout. More oftentimes than not, I learn about where I currently am as a person. And it's not representative, I'm not saying like workouts make you who you are. I'm just simply saying that usually how my commitment, my dedication, my willingness to go to do everything no matter what, as long as it doesn't interfere with family or or anything outside circumstances, like that's a better representation of where I am in my life and how the rest of my life is going than many other barometers that I could probably use. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're setting yourself up. Like, if you go out and you do an Ironman and you end up struggling and sucking it up and finishing, even if it's walking the last half or whatever, and then, disappointed or whatever. But then the key is, how do you respond? Because if you go back and do the exact same training and the exact same game plan and go in and do that again, that's when you can really put yourself in a desolate kind of position, because then you start internalizing that, because at first, it's like all about the external situation, and then you try and do it again to try and impress people and prove that they were wrong about you or whatever, and you do the exact same sort of training plan or approach to it, and then the same thing happens. Mm-hmm. You don't have that high or that fuel, of wanting to, that burns out. You know what I mean? It's like, if you're doing it for external reasons, that stuff can go away in a hurry, because people don't care. The reality is that people don't really care about, I mean, some people do, but for the most part, that illusion that you're trying to impress the world is a false notion. So you have to go back in and say, hey, how can I really get better, and how can I do this for myself, and use it as a tool to get better at everything? Because I agree with what you're saying, is like, when I'm in a good place, period, I'm out there throwing a couple extra laps in, or a little harder effort, or let me go for this and see if I can get it, and bump up, because how do you improve? You bump up to something you can't do, or you can't learn, or can't understand. You try it, and then sit back and see what you can do, because that's how that's how, whatever it is, if I'm doing video editing or writing or whatever, I challenge myself to go places that I'm uncomfortable, and that's how you grow, and that's how you learn. And it's just a general approach, I think, in life, is to go out, and that's when it spills into your triathlon. It's like you feel good about trying something that you weren't good at, and you got better the next time. It's like, that's what happens almost every time we do these camps, is I'll go out and do something that I would have never have done probably if I was by myself. And it's just sort of like, why not?
Exactly.
Everybody else is doing it. And the next thing, Kenny was out there riding with us on Saturday, and he's been a good friend of mine forever, and he's been getting into cycling for a while now, and he's really getting to be a great rider, and he's usually going to the trace and riding 30 to 35 miles or whatever like that, and he's kind of in his comfort zone. But that day, for whatever reason, he broke out, and we went for almost 60, right? I mean, And he was out there the whole time, and he told me, that beforehand he would have never agreed to that, but he just kind of got swept up in the energy of it all. And then the next thing you know, he said he's been really struggling with his running and everything. He went out the next day and he ran faster than he had in a long time, like years. And it's just sort of that.
Yeah, he got out of himself.
Yeah, exactly.
And into other people, which is, like we talked about that, I think, in either the Steve Magnus or Brad Stolberg podcast interview, where they said, you're more likely to succeed when you're doing it for someone else than you are for yourself, because you don't have that fear of failure. And to me, it's so much also about about follow through, because when I decided that doing this full time was what I wanted to do with my life, and finally make that jump and us do it, for sure. I had a chat with a guy that was in the middle of hiring me, and I had to tell him I was going a different direction. And he's a really nice guy and a really, really good businessman, and somebody I respect a lot. And he said, the most exciting thing is choosing to follow your dream, but the most fulfilling part is the follow through. And that's 100% how I feel about the sport in general. Is there's nothing more exciting than signing up for a race and telling your friends and sending the screenshot and doing this and getting pumped and telling your friends and posting your bib. But the most fulfilling part is the follow through. It's the hours and the weeks and the months you put into training, and it's getting there to race day before you even do the race, in my opinion. Before you even do the race, if you can look back and think, dude, I went all in, then I have a very difficult time, barring a ridiculous mechanical, that you're not going to have an awesome race, because that's where the fulfillment comes from going all in, from doing. And going all in doesn't mean making it your life. Going all in means doing it the right way, respecting yourself and your body, and pushing your limits, and finding out just how good can I be at this, or just how good can I be, period. And that's where you get the fulfillment. And then, as we say all the time, that's when you do your Ironman, you walk across the stage, and you get your medal, and then you party with all the other people that fulfilled their dream of committing to something for a long period of time and then achieving it.
Mm-hmm. That's good, man. That's one of my favorites. So,
one of your favorites.
You get that diploma, but you already did the work.
That's it. That is it. And there's a lot of diplomas to be handed out here in the next 6 to 7 weeks.
Oh,
a lot of diplomas.
Man. Yes, there are. Tons of people and tons of...
Yeah.
I am just genuinely excited about being around the people. I'm going to...
I'm so pumped.
Yeah. Let's see. I'll be up at Wisconsin. You'll be at Chattanooga Worlds. And then we'll go down...
Between then, we have another camp.
So that's right. We got another camp.
Yeah, I'm going to be jazzed.
Yeah, it's not too late to get in that last-minute camp if you want to.
Yeah, last-minute camp. You can come join us in August.
Get a solid 3 days of working out before your big race.
Mm-hmm. And hey, if you're around Columbia, Missouri, come see me this Saturday at the Columbia Multisport Club Open Water Swim Clinic.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of stuff. Lots of connecting.
Yeah, there is, man.
Introvert. I'm an extrovert. I'll be kissing babies and shaking hands.
You'll be running for USAT.
Oh, don't even start me on that garbage.
Oh, come on, man. Yeah. Commissioner of Social Activities for USAT.
I have still held strong. I'm still not a USAT member. I pay the $15 fee every time I race.
Do you really?
Yeah, I don't like them. I don't like certain aspects of what they do, so I refuse to give them an annual membership, and I just fork over the 15 bones.
No. Okay. Well, we'll see how that goes.
Well,
it doesn't...
ain't no scene about it. There's two things I've committed to in my life. I've committed to never having to wear a tie to work as my job, and I refuse to do the annual USAT membership.
That's strong, man.
Thanks, man. And all my stubbornness, and that is my strength. Stubbornness.
Dress shoes either, right?
Oh, dude, you know me and shoes. Me and shoes in general don't mix. I mean, you could if you've been around me, the people at camp can probably. Right? As soon as we're done with the run, unlock car, shoes off, flip flops on. Mm-hmm. Yep, ready to roll. So, yeah, that's it.
That's very natural.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, can we still help people get their swim dialed in for this these big races coming in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing somebody's today that's doing Ironman Wisconsin,
yeah.
So which is in 4 weeks. So yeah, there's always time, and we talked about that at camp yesterday, like as the last little, the kind of the sending off of the swim part was, swimming is the only of the three sports to where you should be able to make one small technique change and immediately drop time. And so if anybody, is it going to take off 20 or 30 seconds? No. Can it take off 7 to 12? Absolutely. And it frequently does. I mean, I would say 9 out of every 10 swim analysis I do, they all improve by seconds. They're literally their next swim. But a lot of them report, and we've got, tons of testimonials out there, report double-digit improvements on their 100. Going from like a 2-minute pace to like a 150 or 147 in their next swim. So swimming, if somebody says, "Oh, it's just going to take time," yes, it takes time, but swimming is one of those things where if you get the right feedback and you put it together and you see the right visual, that you should be able to make improvements. So yeah, email me if you want additional information. Right now, the lead time for getting that back once you get it to me is probably 1 to 3 business days max. So it's still a pretty good lead time if you're going to get that in. I got 4 to do here today. 2 of them coincidentally doing Ironman Wisconsin. So in 4 weeks. But yeah, if you just want more general information about what we do as far as training and coaching and training plans and swim analysis and camps and whatever, and you think you might want to be involved in some aspect, not even all, just some, please feel free to reach out. You can reach out to Mike at crushingiron@gmail.com, or you can, email me at c26coach@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to share that info with you.
Yeah. And, if you want more information, we got a little video on swim analysis. Everything is at the Crushing Iron YouTube page. There's a lot of videos up there now. We're doing 100 days to Louisville, and we're on day 39, I believe, today. And we've done a daily video with the kind of things we've been working on and our experiences and all that sort of stuff. But there's a swim analysis video if you want more information on that. And I got to say, man, I've been around you 5 years, and we've been talking swimming probably almost every other day throughout that time. And I learned. I didn't learn. I was reminded of a key breathing component the other day, and it just kind of brought me back into the thing. So yeah, you're right. There's you can think you're a good swimmer, be a good swimmer, but like a simple little tweak in what's going on can change the game. So I highly recommend that swim analysis. So anyway, check that out, and join our Facebook group, private, or the closed Facebook group is search Crushing Iron Group on Facebook, and we'll approve you to get in there. There's a lot of super positive people there, and it keeps growing every day.
Every day
we're at it. Okay, well, that's the Crushing Iron podcast for this Monday.
Monday, August 14th.
Monday, August 14th, and this is our 80-something podcast every Monday and Thursday. So download it on iTunes, subscribe on iTunes, leave a positive comment, and we'll roll from there.
Sounds like a plan, Stan.
Okay, buddy. Have a good one. Go swimming.
Check you later. Go swimming. See you, man.
All right, bye.